I'm still not over that reminder, Seth, worship team, Will, church family, there is no one like Jesus. There is no one like Jesus. And he's not just one who lived. He's not just the king of the universe. He's one who wants to step into our realities. As I think about the marriages struggling in our church, as I think about people in this room who've lost a parent this week, as I think about what's happening in so many of your jobs that I do know about and so much I don't know about, I just need you to know and cling on to the reality. There's no one like Jesus. And, today is a huge day for us here at Epic. We kick off a new ministry season kind of every day on this Sunday because students, what's just around the corner. Students, what's just around the corner. You're not happy, but your parents are. It can't be summer forever. It cannot be. You're like, yes, let's try it. Well, hey, today we do kick off a brand new ministry season here at Epic. And if you saw all the balloons in the lobby, it's because it's promotion day in Epic, kids. And you're like, what's the big deal about that? Listen, if you have been in the 3, 4, and 5-year-old room and you're moving up today, or if you've been in that 5th grade class feeling like you're a little too old for kids and now you're going to step into that student group at 11 o'clock today. And Aniki and her team have done an amazing job getting ready to welcome our children. Aren't you glad that we have a great family ministry? In a city that has less kids and students per capita than any other city, in the middle of a church that's downtown, the family ministry here is thriving. And you always want to know, when do you see the hand of God? You see the hand of God when something is happening that is unlikely to happen in terms of human situations. So I'm grateful for that. All of the kids today are getting an Epic Kids logo sling bag. Sorry, you're too old for that. If you're not a kid today, we've got something to give you. We're going to give, if you're an adult, we'll give you a parking reimbursement if you drove. And if you didn't, we'll give you a high five. So that's happening today. This time next week, I will be kicking off a brand new series called What's the Plan? And if you care at all about the purpose for your life, I would suggest you get here because we're going to talk about, does God really have a purpose? And if so, does that purpose include me? How does God let me know what his purpose is? What's the plan for this church moving forward? What's my vocational plan from God? What should I be doing with my life? Do my desires matter? Is there any freedom when it comes to God's purpose? So I know that you care about your purpose. If you're watching online, you're here in the room. It's great seeing a full house at 9 o'clock and 11 probably. But I want you to know that you care about your purpose, but also everyone that lives above you, beneath you, beside you, everyone that you work with, they care about their purpose too. And so this would be a fantastic series to invite people in your life to come to. So as you leave today, we'll equip you with some invite cards with a specific what's the plan graphic on it. You can just say, hey, here's a church I go to. The pastor's handsome and funny, and we'd love for you to, thank you for proving my point, and we'd love for you to come to church with us. Just a super easy invite. Also next week, under Lindsay and so many other leaders' leadership, we are kicking off signups for a fall session of Epic groups with around 40 small groups this fall. The fact that we have 40 means that there's got to be one for you. You're not that special that you don't fit into one of the 40 groups. But come next week and you will hear about the ones that we're doing and all kinds of days, all kinds of times, all kinds of topics. And I want you to be here for that. And then 2 weeks from today, at this time, normal gathering time, I'm going to give a message about this crazy idea that before you were even being formed in your mother's womb, God already had a plan for your life. So if you care about knowing anything about that and being able to live with confidence in that reality, be here on the 28th. And then 5 p.m. on August 28th, 2 weeks from today, we will meet for the first time ever at 414 Brandon Street for Vision Night. Some of you, you're like, Ben, I'm on vacation. There's only going to be one first time. Just kidding. Go on your vacation. I might do the same and let Will tell you about that. So if you, no, we are so excited. Just walking in the space over the last, I was preaching down at Current Church, one of our church planning partners last week, and Will told you guys we'd signed the keys, but it was a different thing for the first time for Will and I to leave the building and like, oh, we need to lock up. Because it's ours now, church. It is ours. And on that night, what's going to happen is you're going to get a tour of the entire property. That's right. We're no longer just in the basement. We still got some basement action, but we're no longer just in the lower level, we're calling it officially. We also have a main floor on the first floor. We have windows in this church. You're going to get to see in those and out of those. I know, and all of your friends who wouldn't come to this church because they weren't feeling good about that situation, they can come to the next church, I guess. We've got a second floor where the worship auditorium will be. So we'll give you a tour, and we'll tell you how we envision each floor being designed and built out. And then we'll let you know, church, as we've always done, how can we make this vision actually become reality? We'll talk about how each of us can play our part in that process so we can step into really the dream we believe that God has laid on our hearts. And today, I want to close out this Moving Forward series that we've been in all summer long. And I want to think about the things that bring us joy. What are the things in life that are currently bringing you joy? What are the things in your life? I just want you to think about those things. Maybe even from the past week. Maybe you're like, nothing. What are the things that are bringing you joy in this season? In many seasons of my life, and certainly in this current season, it was great to welcome my wife Shauna and my daughter Kavita and 9 other women back from Ghana and hear about all of their stories that they experienced there. But when I get to go to a great dinner date with Shauna and the food is amazing and we're talking about what God has done in our lives over the previous week or in this past season or what we're imagining, there's a lot of joy in that moment for me. And my joy goes up when she says, "Would you like the rest of my steak?" I'm like, that's even more joy-filled. Absolutely, I would. That's a joy-filled moment. I have so much joy in doing what we're doing today when you and I are gathered in this space, and it's obvious to all of us as there's a song being led by Seth or the team, and we know that God's tangible presence is among us, and we all of a sudden are aware that there's something way bigger than just music and teaching going on in this moment. I have so much joy when I'm in a staff meeting with our incredible team and someone shares an idea and all of us look up from our papers or our computers and we look each other in the eye and we know as that idea has just been shared, God is breathing this thing into existence. There's a lot of joy in that moment. And, sometimes you get a lot of joy from what you were missing for a while. So I've got so much joy with seeing that August sunshine. Anybody else? Anybody else? I mean, it was amazing. I guess July was worth it. I don't know. But I'm loving the sun. I hope you're spending time in the sun, if you're allowed to, spending time in the sun. A lot of joy there. And then I know a lot of parents, if you have joy because your kids are going back to school this week or the next week, would you just make some noise, parents? Anybody glad? Kids, it's not because we don't love you. We just want other people to love you. And what we know is that absence makes the heart grow fonder. So when you walk out at 7 or 7:30 or 8 in the morning, our love for you is so much greater when you return at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock. But let me tell you what really is bringing me joy these days. A lot of you know that Shauna and I moved here with 3 boys who were 2, 4, and 6 at the time. And now those young men are 18 and 16 and 14. And we have a daughter who's also 16 we've adopted along the way. But probably the thing that may be bringing me the most joy in my life right now is when, and some of you are in this room, but when other adults are doing things for my children without me putting them up to that. I'm sure my kids are like, did you? No, I didn't. So like this week, like someone pouring into one of my sons, and over the last couple of weeks, people pouring into the life of my daughter. It's as if they had given me the gift myself. And you may think, Ben, what do you mean? It wasn't for you. But let me tell you, you receive gifts based on what you value in life. And it makes sense. And of course, Shauna and I want to pour into our kids, but when someone else does something for one of our children, it just does something where it feels like that is the greatest gift, and I didn't even actually get the gift. And as I think about that for me, I wonder if God's like that. I wonder if one of the things that brings God the most joy in the world, yes, when he pours out blessings on our lives, I think he delights in that, but I wonder if it brings him so much joy when we pour blessing out on the life of someone else. I wonder if it's so much joy that God actually feels like we're doing it to him. This is what I want to talk about today. And what I want to do right from the get-go is encourage us sometimes when we think we're barely doing anything meaningful at all, I believe we're getting the very attention of Jesus himself. This is what I want to talk about as we close down this series today in a message I'm calling When the Least is the Most. When the least is the most. Our text for today is Matthew 25. It's a strong text. Matthew 25, verses 34 through 46. You can stand with me. You can turn there, go to the app on your phone. Let me tell you a little bit of context, what's been happening. It's a weighty chapter, to be honest, because what Jesus is doing is he's really laying out the vision for our forever life. And though we always want a third option, what Jesus does in this text is he says, at the end of the day, or to say it better, at the end of days, there are going to be two groups of people, he says. There will be a group that spends there forever with him, and there will be a group of people that will spend there forever separated from him. Lots of questions as we think about that and we think about the world, but what I'd want to ask you today is, like, which group do you want to be in on? Which group do you want to be a part of? And then Jesus says these words in Matthew 25, starting in the 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one," keyword one, "of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. You may be seated. I pray that God would speak to us out of this teaching from Jesus. I mean, how can Jesus claim that our entire eternal existence comes down to what we do in this one category? Like, does that seem fair? And then we begin to think about where we live, and we're like, whoa, a lot of pressure because of where we live and what we see. Can I get a witness? Only me? Like, maybe I should move where there's not so many people needing clothes, needing food, needing a home. Well, let's unpack the message. But I mean, does Jesus really mean that we will get in on eternity with God if we give one person food? Does he mean that we will actually miss out on eternity with God if we fail to do these things? Well, remember this, whenever you come across one verse or one teaching in Scripture, you always want to complement that with what else is there, okay? So we always want to go, hey, what else is there? What else do I know? And it doesn't always complete the puzzle and give us clarity completely, but we want to think about what else we know. And let me just give you one of the what else we knows that can complement this idea about how we get eternity with God. I think about how John sums up Jesus coming to earth when he says in chapter 1, verse 12, "Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." Now, some of us want to perform for our eternity. Others of us like, no, I'll take that one. To all who did receive him, who welcomed Jesus into their lives, to those who believed in his name, that does not mean they knew and believed facts about Jesus, but they put the full weight of their faith and trust in Jesus. They become children of God. So receive, believe, become. But here's what you have to know. If you truly become a child of God, over time, your life will look like your Father's. Your love will look like God's. Your generosity will look like God's. Your joy will look like God's. Your willingness to share will look like God's. Your blessing kind of life will look like his blessing kind of life. I said we've been in this series all summer. We started June 5th. Anybody remember that sermon? Me either. This is where you feel so confident as a preacher. You're like, oh man, I know this is going to stick with them forever. That's why we have all of our messages online for those of us who forget. We've been in this series all summer, moving forward, the path of transformation. And we knew that all of us are being formed in different kinds of ways, so we want to ask the question, like, how can we do things so that we're formed in the ways of Jesus? But we've got to know that our spiritual journey can never just be all about us. I love the way Robert Mulholland says it in a great spiritual formation book he wrote called Invitation to a Journey. And here's what he says the definition is. He says, spiritual formation is a process of being conformed to the image of Christ, and here's the part I like, for the sake of others. So when you and I are thinking about our own spiritual formation, it's pretty easy, wouldn't you agree, to just focus on us and God, anybody? It's like I'm trying to become this like God. I'm trying to have God's life in me, and that's certainly a huge point of it. But we've got to remember that when God is forming us, he's not just doing it for our sake. He's doing it for the sake of others. And transformation occurs when we apply our faith. Transformation doesn't happen when we show up on a Sunday, though it can begin or be a part of the process. On June 5th, way back to that message we forgot, I said this: transformation is greater than information. Transformation is greater than information. Here at Epic, we're not just trying to fill our heads with knowledge. Jesus doesn't want us just to know things about him. He wants us to be transformed into his image. In fact, the longest teaching Jesus ever gave, if there's ever been a master communicator, Jesus would be that master communicator. His longest message ever is referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. And after he finishes that teaching, he concludes it with these exact words: therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Everyone who hears, you've got to have some information, but you got to do something with what you're doing. And here's where most of us are in our spiritual lives. Let's just be honest. Most of us know more than we're doing, or just the pastor. For a lot of times, right, Alex, it's not that I don't know what to do. It's just like I struggle between knowing what to do and actually doing what I know to do. And that's the point. But I'm convinced so many of us think, okay, I've got to show God my faith. We think we've got to do something spectacular to demonstrate our faith in God, right? So anybody ever made those promises? Like, okay, probably because you sinned. Like, God, I'll never do it again. In fact, I'll not do this other thing for 3 or 4 days. Or I've got to show you. I've got to prove something to you. And so we try to figure out what can we do that would really get God's attention. But what if it doesn't have to be spectacular? What if it's far more simple and seemingly ordinary than that? Let me give you this from Mark chapter 9, verse 41, where Jesus says, hey, the thing you think isn't that important, I find it quite significant. When he said this, truly I tell you, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward. Like, Jesus, really? If I give Lindsay a cup of water, I've got eternal reward. He's like, yes, as long as it's cold. He's like, it got to be a cup of cold water, which wasn't as easy then as it is now. But what's the secret on that simple act of service? The secret is the motive. Jesus says, if you do it, what? In my name. So let's listen really closely. What you and I do matters, but it also matters equally why we do what we do. Would you agree that motives matter? But here's the principle that we have to know. The tricky thing about motives is that they cannot be seen, at least not initially. The tricky thing about motives, over time, I think we do understand the motives in people's hearts, like what's really there. But at the moment that you're meeting someone, or if you're not around them that much, the tricky thing about motives is that they're just unseen, at least initially. Many of us know the story of a woman in the Gospels. Multiple Gospels tell the story where she broke an expensive jar of perfume and she poured it all out on Jesus. And you would think, because we look back at a moment like that, you would think that everyone would be thrilled about that moment, but they weren't. They were quite outraged. The other gospel writers say that it was the disciples who did it. John, the gospel writer, outs Judas as being the one who did it. In John 12, 4-6, listen to what Judas did. Listen to what he said. Listen to what was true about the motives in his heart. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, was later to betray him, objected. Listen to Judas. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Now, if you didn't know Judas, and you're there in the house, and this goes down, and you're like, oh, it's amazing she did that, but then you know how groupthink happens, right? Right? A lot of you're wearing what you're wearing today because somebody else wore it first. I was like, yeah, the all-black uniform, I'm in. Groupthink. And when you hear Judas go, hey, we shouldn't have done that with that perfume. This money could have been used for the poor. You would be thinking, yes, you would comment on Judas's Instagram. Absolutely. I can't believe it. Judas didn't care about the poor. Judas cared about Judas. When you think about this moment with Judas and the idea of motives, and you look at all of the outrage in our world today, I want to give you a statement that's strong, but I stand by it. Here it is. It is possible to be very vocal about all of the injustices in our world without actually doing anything for anyone. It is easy to yell. It takes a little more time to feed someone. I'm going to say it again, and I'm cool with you wrestling with it. It is possible to be very vocal about all of the injustices in our world without actually doing anything for anyone. Judas is going, give that money to the poor. Was Judas helping the poor? Or was Judas building Judas's platform? Here's what we've got to know also. Jesus hasn't simply asked us to name all of the problems in our world. He has asked us to become the solution to some of them. So which problems in our world are you becoming the solution to? If I'm honest, and you can tell me if you agree, when I see so much need in our world today, I don't know if we can make a difference. Anybody? And then I see so much need in our own nation, and I'm not sure we can make a difference. And then I see the state of California, and then I see all the things and read all the articles about our city, and then I look at my own neighborhood, and then I look at my own street. I'm like, I'm not sure. I think part of that is like we just don't know if our little bit in our minds is actually going to make a great difference. But when you see Jesus say what you did for how many of these? How many? It's a number between 0 and 2. One, what you did for one of these. Let's just start there. I love how Andy Stanley says it. He says, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Just do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. We're like, oh, but I can't do it for everyone, and it won't be equal, and just start somewhere. Mother Teresa said something very similar. She said, if you cannot feed 100 people, then just feed one. Tell me if you guys feel what I feel sometimes. I know that our vision at Epic is to orient our entire lives around Jesus. Everybody know that? Otherwise, we can have a class right now. But when I look at Jesus, I know that he loved the whole world, and he loves the whole world. That feels overwhelming to me. When I look at the life of Jesus as we celebrated communion, I know that he gave himself for the whole world. Anybody ever feel the challenge of how do I love and give my life for 8 billion people? But we forget something so crucial. We forget how he lived while he was on this earth. Let me ask you a question that I know you know the answer to, but if you're like me, you hadn't thought about it like this. Did Jesus do for everyone what he did for some ones? This is a freeing truth. Did he? Right, he healed blind people, but did he heal all blind people? Yes, he invites Zacchaeus down from the tree, that tax collector. He goes into his house. Salvation happens. He gives them the time. But Jesus doesn't do that with every tax collector. Does Jesus spend a lot of time with a Samaritan woman in John chapter 4? Long conversation about how to have living water, and does she get to introduce Jesus to the people in her village? Absolutely, but does Jesus spend that kind of time with every Samaritan woman? Yes, Jesus brings Lazarus back from the dead. But does Jesus resurrect every man and woman from the dead? It's easy for me to say on the sidelines when I think I have to love everyone tangibly. But what if that's not what God's calling me to do? What if he is putting human beings on my street, in my family, in this congregation, in our partnerships that Lindsay's leading us out on? What if he's putting people and go, Ben, I've got one for you? And sometimes one turns into 2, turns into 10, turns into 20, right? The more God blesses us, the more we can do for people. And I love that idea. But what if we just start doing for one? I mean, answer this question. What are you doing for people who cannot do anything for you? You're like, Ben, this is convicting. I know, I've sat with it longer than you have. I'm with you. Here's another question. What if meeting the needs of others meets one of your greatest needs? So here's what I'm convinced of. I'm way more anxious when I'm consumed with Ben Pilgreen. Anybody? I mean, not you being consumed with me, but you know what I mean. You should be anxious about that too. But when I'm so self-focused and short-sighted and self-absorbed and self-centered, one of the best things I can do, and I know some of you want to say, but Ben, I've got this huge thing at work, I've got this huge thing in my family. I know. I've got this mental health thing. I know. But I'm just telling you, get outside of yourself and just see what happens. Yes, to bless someone else, but I think it's the best thing for you. And from day one at Epic, we've tried to do that. In fact, if you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, let me just encourage you, when you start something, bake into the early DNA of that thing what you want to be true 5 years and a decade and 50 years from then. Don't play the we'll be generous when, we'll care about others when, we'll serve others when. No. Bake it in early. And so in November of 2011, when Epic was less than 1 year old, we entered into our very first international partnership with United Christian Center Church in Kampala, Uganda, through Compassion International. Since then, and Lindsay, help me if I missed something, since then we've also entered into partnerships internationally with Romania, Ghana, Vietnam, Chile, Guatemala, Ghana, did I say? I knew I was gonna miss one. But that first partnership led to a Compassion Sunday just like we're having today. And I told you, our family was young when the church started, and so in 2011, I've got a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and we look at the packets like you have on your seats today, and we felt drawn to this 8-year-old boy named Saddam Mutebi. And we took the packet home like some of you will do today, I pray, and we began to pray for Saddam, and we began to write Saddam letters. And then the very next year, I got to go with the first ever team to Uganda and visit Saddam in person, to be in his home, to be meeting his family, his mom, his sisters. And then in 2016, I got to take my oldest, Elijah, and here's a picture of Elijah and Saddam. If you know what Elijah looks like now, it's crazy that that's 6 years ago. I mean, it's insanity to me. 2 years later, in 2018, I got to take our next oldest, Sam, to meet Saddam. And 2020, we were supposed to take our other 2 kids, and you know why we didn't get a chance to do that. So here's the last moment that I was with Saddam. And Saddam and our family, we still write each other letters, and it's crazy. Not just to think about how old Epic is, but we've sponsored this kid about the same length of time that Epic's been around. And here was a couple of recent letters from Saddam. He's 19 now. Ben, how are you doing? I'm doing well on my side, and God is doing wonders in me. I hope this letter finds you well and sound. I received your letter with much gratitude and joy. Thank you for always keeping the communication flowing. I have not been able to play football recently since I am now too busy with the books. See, kids, it goes bad all around the world when you get older. Just no playtime. Next letter. I was on cloud 9 when I received a letter from you, and all my family members appreciated God for giving you a helping heart, because it is rare to find a person like you. Sent a picture of his mom with her vegetables and fruit that she sells. And you know, preparing for this message obviously brought back a whole lot of memories for me. And what's crazy, you guys, is that over these 11 years, we have sponsored and still sponsor 211 kids just through individuals and families at Epic. 211, it means when I get to go see Saddam, I get to see his health report. I see when he had malaria and how we help pay a hospital bill. I see what his grades are and how we pay for his tuition. And we just had a group come back from Ghana. They were with how many of the girls in the Pearl House? 57 girls in the Pearl House. And the fact that we as a church get to make this huge difference. And so as you think about that today and consider it, it's like, man, not only do I get to do something for an actual child in Uganda, but Jesus says if I do it for that child, I'll do it for him. But I want to go even further and say if you do it for a child and you do it for Jesus, you'll actually be doing something for yourself. I don't say that to help you and I lean towards selfishness. I say that because I know that God wants to form me, and one of the ways that he forms me is by getting me outside of me. And that's what he wants to do for so many of us today. Listen to this from Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 5, and then I'll close our time. In Matthew 18, Jesus again talking about what seems like it might not be significant to people on earth, but it changes things when you get into the kingdom math. And he says, at that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Maybe it's not as spectacular as we used to think it had to be. Maybe it's just realizing that in the kingdom, the least is the most. And maybe we don't have to perform our way to get the attention of Jesus. Maybe when we do something with the right motives in his name, all of heaven takes notice. And today I want to encourage you really two things. The first is this: have you welcomed Jesus into your life? Have you welcomed him into your life? Yet to all those who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he is still giving the right to become a daughter or a son of God. What a privilege that the King of the universe would call us co-heirs with him. And then secondly, would you consider praying about welcoming one of these compassion kids into your life? Yes, making a profound difference in their lives. Yes, getting the attention of Jesus, but also putting you in a place where joy, I think, will increase when you engage in something like this. I want to ask you just to bow your heads as I prepare to close this time. As we think about a new season here at Epic, a lot of things are on the horizon that we've never done before. Really excited about a lot. But there are other things that will just continue to be what we do that we've done from day one. And one is to care for people outside of our community while still caring for people in our community. And the first step, though, is have you ever welcomed Jesus into your life? If not, you can literally say to him in this moment, Jesus, I welcome you into my life. I receive you and I put my faith in you. And then you can just say to him, would you save me from a life without you, and would you bring me into a life with you? And then for others of us, will you welcome one of these children into your life, into your heart? I think what would be great for our response time today is just to make this place in front of the stage an altar. And let me tell you where I would love for our focus to be. Really twofold. One is, if you sponsor any child in Uganda, or maybe you do it in Ghana through the Pearl House, or maybe you do it through Mobilize Love or City Impact, I'm just going to ask us just to come and collectively this symbol that we are going to pray for all of those sponsored kids. You can do that now. Just to say, hey, I'm gonna get down here. I'm just, even if I haven't, and this is not about, I haven't prayed for them in months or years or this week. Just hey, God, we want you, knowing what you know, we want you to move in the hearts and lives of these kids and families. And then if you're a parent, obviously, some of us sent kids back to school this past week. Some of us will send kids to school this week. Some of you have a little bit more time to go. But if you're a parent, would you just come to this altar? And maybe you have twofold reasons to be here. And would you pray for your children's school year? There are no guarantees. Listen, yes, they are back in their school buildings, but that doesn't mean it's going to go how it needs to go. We want God's hand and favor on it. And even if you're not a parent, but you care about the next generation of Epic kids and Epic students, guys, listen, I get to work with some of my best friends in the world every day. I get to work with people who I think on our staff are all Christians. But our kids don't go to school by and large in those environments. It's not easy. The pressures that they feel, getting themselves to and from school on trains and buses and in carpools. Even if you don't have kids, would you just join us and go, hey, I want to pray for the next generation. I want to pray for Aniki and her team as she leads in Epic Kids. I want to pray for Anthony and Krista and their team as they lead our Epic students. I want to pray for more families to become a part of this church where Jesus is the center and where families can thrive if they get engaged. So as we worship, let's just pour our hearts out and ask God, would you do something for this generation? God, would you make us a place where families continue to thrive? God, could we say, hey, we want to change the narrative in San Francisco. God, we want to do that for those in our Epic community. We want to do it for those in this city. And God, we want to use the gifts you've given us to bless these 200 plus children in Africa, God, those that are at the Pearl House, or in Uganda, God, and those in the Pearl House in Ghana, God, we want to make a difference there, God, with here at City Impact and through Mobilized Love, God, and because justice matters, we want to care deeply for the next generation. God, those that are unprotected, those that are vulnerable, God, those who are on the other end of the injustices that are being done in our world, God, those who are being oppressed, God, would you help us be the answer? But God, we cannot see everything you can see. We cannot know everyone that you can know. So God, would you come and break strongholds? God, would you provide food and shelter and education and freedom from oppression? God, would you do that for the sake of your name, King Jesus? We're asking for a movement among the next generation, God, among, yes, kids and middle school students and high school students and college students, God, and these young adults who are moving here for grad school or to take their first jobs. God, would you give us a vision for this generation? God, we want to tell of your great acts. We want to let people to know that there's a God who loves them and has a purpose for them and will go with them. God, come and move and hear our requests now and respond and bless and provide and protect because of your great name.